Hello, welcome to Music Brain. I just want to add a few notes to the Gong video I put out yesterday. Things I should have covered which I didn't, and so it's only going to be brief, but here goes. First thing, in David's own words really, about his Obscura series of CDs that he put out, described to you much better than I ever could about what it's about. Very, very briefly then, in his own words. I saw it as a chance to make public a series of limited editions of my favourite moments of inspired music and poetic creativity in each of the styles I've experimented with. Solo shows, duets, Spanish acoustic, jazz rock, ambient, electroacoustic, imp pro rock, guitar glissando and theremin, experimental sound inventions, atonal textures, tape loops and collage performance poetry. So there we are, in his own words, that's the range of music you're going to get throughout those discs. That's the first thing I wanted to cover on there. There's a few other bits I want to cover too. One, I want to go into the mythology of the three albums that I discussed yesterday, the Radio Gnome Invisible trilogy. I'm going to cover a little bit of that, just to give you a bit more in-depth insight as to what it's all about. And also, I failed to mention, and how could I, all the band members of the iterations of Gong, which I thought might be a list, might be a bit boring. I sort of left them out yesterday. I thought, well, anybody who's really into Gong would probably think, well, why hasn't he talked about... I can't talk about all of it, obviously, it'd go on for 8 hours, but I'll very briefly cover some of the band members in there to give them a shout out. It's only fair and right that I should, because Gong is a sum of its parts, isn't it? That I think is probably all I'm going to cover today. Just look at my notes here. So yeah, oh, and another little thing that I did fail to mention at the time also was another side project David did was, and people would have been screaming at the video probably who know this, but he was also in a band called the Magic Brothers too, and so we'll cover those right now. Okay, we'll start with the Radio Gnome Invisible trilogy. I'm just going to lift this straight from Wikipedia. It's not cheating, it's just I couldn't say it any better than it actually mentions here. So very briefly, I'm going to be reading it, so it's not going to be that brilliant to look at, but just hear it, because I want you to understand the what those three albums are all about. So okay, so let's begin with the Flying Teapot album, which is the first in the Radio Gnome Invisible trilogy. I'm going to be reading this off the internet here, so it's just so that I don't and ah and all this. If I just read it out, then it gets across straight away what it's about. Okay. The story begins on the album Flying Teapot 1973, when a pig farming Egyptologist called Mr. T. Being is sold a magic earring by an antique teapot street vendor and tea label collector called Fred the Fish. The earring is capable of receiving messages from the planet Gong via a pirate radio station called Radio Gnome Invisible. Being and Fish head off to the Himalayas of Tibet, where they meet the great beer yogi Banana Ananda in a cave. Ananda tends to chant Banana Nirvana Manana a lot and gets drunk on Foster's Australian lager. And this latter development mirrors the real-life experience of band members David Allen and Gilly Smith, who met their saxophonist Didier Melherb in a cave in Mallorca. Meanwhile, the mythology's central character, Zero the hero, is going about his everyday life when he suddenly has a vision in Charing Cross Road, London. He is compelled to seek heroes and starts worshipping the Cockpot Pixie, one of a number of pothead pixies from the planet Gong. These pixies are green, have propellers on their heads and fly around in teapots, inspired by Bertrand Russell's Teapot. Zero is soon distracted by a cat to whom he offers his fish and chips. The cat is actually the good witch Yoni, and she gives Zero a potion in return. That is off the first album. Okay, the second album is called Angel's Egg, also 1973, and here we go on this one. The second part, Angel's Egg 1973, begins with Zero falling asleep under the influence of the potion and finding himself floating through space. After accidentally scaring a space pilot called Captain Capricorn, Zero locates the planet Gong and spends some time with a prostitute who introduces him to the moon goddess Selene. Zero's drug-induced trip to the planet Gong continues, and the pothead pixies explain to him how their flying teapots fly, a system known as glidding. He is then taken to the one invisible temple of Gong. Inside the temple, Zero is shown the Angel's Egg, the physical embodiment of the 32 octave doctors, descendants of the great god Sel. The Angel's Egg is the magic eye mandala that features on much of the band's sleeve art. It's also a sort of recycling plant for pothead pixies. A grand plan is revealed to Zero. There will be a great melting feast of freaks which Zero must organise on Earth. When everyone is enjoying the feast, a huge global concert, the Switch Doctor will turn everybody's third eye on, ushering in a new age on Earth. The Switch Doctor is the Earth's resident octave doctor who lives near Banana Ananda's cave in Pot headquarters called the, I can't pronounce this, Compagnia d'Opera Invisible de Tibet, and transmits all the details to the Gong Band via the Banana Moon Observatory. That's the second album. And the third album, You, 1974, is thus. In the third instalment, You, 1974, Zero must first return from his trip. He asks Hiram the Master Builder how to structure his vision and build his own invisible temple. Having done this, Zero establishes that he must organise the great melting feast of freaks on the Isle of Everywhere, Bali. The event is going well, and the Switch Doctor switches on everyone's third eye except for Zero's, for he is out the back indulging in earthly pleasures, fruitcake. Zero has missed out on the whole third eye revelation experience and is forced to continue his existence spinning round on the wheel of births and deaths and slowly converging on the Angel's Egg in a way which, to a certain extent, resembles Buddhist reincarnation. That is the three albums and what they're about. And if that doesn't confuse you, nothing will. But there you are. I'll put it out there so that you can best understand it. I could never have just sat here and try and describe all of that. So there you are. That's that. And now for the band members. Okay. Here we go then with some former members in no particular order. We had David Allen, vocals and guitar. Gilly Smith, vocals, space whispering. Ziska Baum, vocals. Lauren Stanley, flute. Didier Malherbe, saxophone and flute. Rashid Horai, drums and percussion. Christian Trich, bass guitar. Pip Pyle, drums, percussion. Sadly died in 2006. Laurie Allen, drums, percussion. Mac Poole, drums and percussion. Charles Hayward, drums and percussion. Rob Tate, drums and percussion. Diane Stewart, vocals. Tim Blake, synthesizer and vocals. Francis Mose, bass and piano. Steve Hillage, lead guitar and vocals. Mike Howlett, bass and vocals. Pierre Moulin, drums and percussion. Miquette Girardi, vocals and synthesizer. Chris Cutler, drums and percussion. Bill Bruford, drums and percussion. Brian Davison, drums and percussion, who died in 2008. Dave Stewart, keyboards and synthesizer. Patrice Lemoyne, keyboards and synthesizer. Muriel Bois, percussion. George Pinchevsky, violin. Sandy Coley, vocals. Stephen Lurie, lead guitar. Keith Bailey, bass and vocals. Paul Noble, synthesizer. Graham Clark, violin. Shaimal Maitra, percussion and synthesizer. Chris Taylor, drums and percussion. Theo Travis, saxophone and flute. Mark Robson, synthesizer. Mark Hewlins, lead guitar. Guayo Zepik, synthesizer guitar. Josh Pollock, lead guitar. Dar Moan, Brad Bridge, bass. Cotton Casino, synthesizer vocals. Kawabata Makoto, lead guitar. Orlando Allen, drums and percussion. Tsuyama Atsushi, bass. And Tatsuya Yasuda, sorry if I don't pronounce it right, drums, percussion. Marcello Ringel, saxophone and flute. Gabriel Costa, bass. And Fred Barley, drums. If I've missed any out, I've missed them out. Current members are Fabio El Golfetti, lead guitar. Dave Sturt, bass. Ian East, saxophone and flute. Kavus Tarabi, guitar and vocals. And Cheb Nettles, drums. There we are. It might be a bit boring reading out names, but it's only right and fair that they all get a mention, because Gong would not be Gong without each and every one of those band members, past and present. So I've covered the band members. I've given you a little bit more information about the Obscura CDs that David Allen put out. Mentioned it was also in the Magic Brothers. There's loads that I haven't covered, and how can I? Hopefully, see. Really what all this is about, me putting these videos out, is I'm not the world's best reviewer, but for me, I've always been the same growing up. I get so much pleasure out of if I can just turn one person onto a piece of music they haven't heard before, a band that they've never heard before, and they really like it and get into it and enjoy it and get pleasure from it. Nothing's better, you know. I just get so much pleasure from that thought. So it goes without saying that all of the videos I'm going to be putting out and all the albums that I cover and the songs that I talk about and I'm going to leave things out. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to mispronounce names. I'm going to leave personnel off and details off and all this of it. Of course I am. Because probably from the very people that already know about the bands anyway, because if you're ignorant about the bands you wouldn't have known anyway, would you? But the important thing is that you learn a little bit more, somebody might learn something that they haven't heard before, and the most important thing is checking out the music that I'm talking about at the end of the day. That is what it's all about, is just to you know, spread the love, the entertainment, and the passion, and the hope it'll all just spread. You know, just want all this good music to spread, and these bands deserve to be heard and listened to more often. And I think now increasingly there's less and less on mainstream through the mainstream media that is worth anything. Let's face it. You've got to delve into this music. It's vast. You'll never get bored with it, and there's plenty and plenty to listen to there. And I'm waffling again.